This is E&P Reports from Editor and Publisher Magazine, the authoritative voice of news media since 1884, serving newspapers, broadcasts, digital, and all multimedia news publishing. And greetings once again, Mike Blinder, publisher of E&P Magazine. Again, quick housekeeping, listening to us on whatever podcast platform you enjoy. By all means, please follow us. Watching us on our YouTube channel, there is a subscribe button below me. There is a bell immediately to the right. If you hit that thing, you're going to get an update each and every time we upload a new episode of E&P Reports. I am really thrilled to have Juana Summers with us. Juana, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You got to be pretty psyched right now at your new gig. You're the new co-host of All Things Considered, one of my favorite programs on NPR. I mean, think of the heritage. And how long have you been at the gig now doing it?
I have been at NPR for about two and a half years. I joined in October of 2019. My first day on the job is actually June 27th.
Wow. But you've been on the program, correct? Before, but
yeah.
Now... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been on the program as a journalist. I've reported some stories for the show, and then I had the opportunity to guest host the show for 2 weeks back in March.
So you're just going to be stepping into a chair that others have had over years of amazing chops. This got to be a big thing for you.
Yeah, it's as someone who got their start in public radio when I was a college student at the University of Missouri, I don't think you could have told that 17 or 18-year-old that she would one day be hosting one of the biggest news magazine shows in public radio. It's I'm really honored and humbled to have the opportunity, and I'm really excited to introduce a new generation of listeners to what we do at NPR on All Things Considered and on our podcast, Consider This.
Well, we're going to talk about that and more right after this.
This episode of E&P Reports is sponsored by IQ Audience Plus by Town News. Consumer revenue has never been more important. Digital leaders at media organizations worldwide are asking the same question. How do we accelerate the growth of consumer revenue? Traditional one-size-fits-all paywalls aren't the answer. They're blunt instruments that treat all visitors the same way, costing you money. IQ Audience Plus by Town News is a smart, dynamic metering solution that empowers you to maximize revenue by identifying key audiences, seeding engagement, and growing membership and subscriptions. Ready to supercharge your consumer revenue, grow engagement, and bolster your advertising income? Visit townnews.com/EP today to learn more about IQ Audience Plus by Town News.
All right, Juana, I don't want to discuss media with you at all. I did some stalking. I hope you don't mind. Are you really a level 1 weightlifting coach? Is this true?
I am. I have been an avid CrossFitter and weightlifter since 2015. And I recently, to kind of better myself and my own weightlifting abilities, I got my USA weightlifting certification. I've also worked as a strength and conditioning coach as kind of a side hustle in the past. And I love it. I mean, everybody needs that thing that they really love when they're not at work that they can focus on. And I love when I step into the gym, it's an hour and a half that's just for me, where I kind of shut my brain off and I shut the news off. And I just lift really heavy weights. It's a ton of fun. I love it.
You do that daily?
About 4 times a week.
That's amazing. And you're also a certified personal trainer now, right?
I am. Yes. Like I said, as I mentioned, I've on and off throughout the years worked in boutique fitness and gyms and things like that as a side hustle on top of being a journalist. And I just love learning more about the human body and how it works and how to help myself become the best athlete I can be and help others become the best athlete they can be.
Well, let's just spend the next 20 minutes talking about how I can get better. No, I'm kidding. All right. So, I mean, you've had journalism in your blood. You're from Kansas City, right? Is that originally, or St. Louis? Where were you in Missouri? Where were you born?
I am proudly born and raised in Kansas City, where most of my extended family and my parents still live.
All right. Excellent. And then you always had this yen to be in journalism, correct? Ever since your youth.
Yeah, I got really fortunate that I took a fantastic high school journalism class at my high school my freshman year. And that's when I really got the bug. You know, I always joke that the idea that someone would pay me money to be really nosy and ask people a lot of questions and then to write about their stories, like what a privilege and what a fun line of work. And so from there, I worked for the teen page of my hometown newspaper, the Kansas City Star, as well as my high school newspaper for 3 years. And I was pretty basically cemented from age 13 that this is what I wanted to do. And I feel just really fortunate that I've been able to do it for the entirety of my career so far.
And you went to Missouri, which has got an amazing, I've actually done speeches there, an amazing
yeah.
journalism program. And that kept you close to home, kind of, right? So you were able to kind of grow and nurture yourself there. And then you just shot out big time. I mean, you've worked at CNN, right? NPR, Mashable. So, and most of that has been, again, I'm just trying to get a idea of your background. A lot of that has been political, correct? In your reporting, politics and.
That's right. I've almost exclusively covered politics and policy throughout my career, which was something that I identified that I wanted to do early on. You know, growing up in Kansas City, going to college at Mizzou in mid-Missouri, which is not far away from the state capital of Jefferson City, gave me kind of an early front row seat to how politics works and how sometimes it doesn't work. And that made me really curious about the kinds of questions people in communities across the country had for their elected officials, the kind of needs they felt were not being met. And I think that political stories are incredibly rich. I think it's something that's very dear to the public service mission of public radio and nonprofit journalism. And I've loved I've covered 4 presidential campaigns, lots of congressional races, the state legislature back in Missouri. And I've loved getting to get kind of a front row seat to government at all levels throughout the last 10 or so years.
And by all means, now you're definitely going to keep that front row seat because it's just so big in the news right now, especially what's going on with Congress and, of course, the commission, and we could go on and on and on. But let's dive a little, if we can, into NPR. I mean, I've always been an NPR listener. I've always been an NPR supporter. I was actually not to bore you, but my audience knows sometimes I refer to my background. I was a morning man disc jockey when I started off in radio, but way before your time. I mean, I started as a DJ in the 70s. But I was actually a fundraiser for public television and radio in Maine, in New England. I used to go on and do their, fundraising and all that and more. And I've always felt there was a need for that segment in our society of having nonprofit journalism. But today, that seems to be one of the ways that many local newsrooms are now looking for funding. You are in a nonprofit environment, right? So there's a limit. How should I put this? You're constantly limited, not by profit, but meaning that your budgets are smaller, correct? I mean, you don't have all the dollars sometimes that a CNN has. Sure. Do you miss those days of being part of the network now that, or AP, you spent some time there as well, that now you're in that nonprofit world?
I think that public radio brings something so unique to the table. Yes, we are supported by the generosity of the supporters who support our member stations across the country, but I really view those member stations as our strength. One of the things I love about working at NPR that's a little different than anywhere else I've worked, although the AP probably comes the closest here by virtue of how they're set up, is the fact that our member stations across the country are our strength. Anytime I, as a journalist, I'm traveling to another city or part of the country, I'm able to call up a member station reporter who knows their community inside and out and draw from their institutional knowledge, from their deep work and reporting, to partner with them to do smart storytelling, something we do a lot on the politics team in particular, because there's just such a need for that deep level of expertise to understand the different issues that animate any single community. So sure, there are some bells and whistles that maybe don't exist at a place like NPR that you may see, but I think we punch above our weight every single day. And I think that we bring a tremendous public service people. And I think that I would put up our network of member stations against anybody else's operation in the country right now.
Well, I remember doing the fundraising in New England for public broadcasting. It was based out of the 2 colleges in Maine. And I was president of the Maine Broadcasters at the time. And I was running a pretty profitable radio group. So I was always saying, we're making a lot of money where I go, but these people aren't doing it for the money. I mean, no one I ever met throughout my 15 years associated with Maine public broadcasting, no one was there for the money. You know what I mean? Because that you could, no offense, but you could leave today with your background and go get yourself a high profile job. You know that, on one of the big networks. Is that where you're going to stay? Am I allowed to ask that? Because you're young, you've got many years ahead of you. Is this your passion?
I will tell you something that we didn't talk about. I am a person who, I worked at NPR for about a year and a half earlier in my career. I left, I worked in commercial media. I worked at CNN and the AP and did other things. And I came back to NPR. And one of the reasons I came back is because I care so deeply about our public service mission. And the other reason I came back is because this is an organization that is constantly evolving and changing. I have loved watching NPR grow into a real competitor in the digital space. People may know us for what we do on the radio predominantly, but we're experimenting every day on new and emerging platforms. We're elevating new voices. I don't know if you've seen one of our staffers from Planet Money. He's on TikTok and constantly going viral for the experimentation he's doing there that resonates with a young audience. We have the mission, we have the experimentation, and I just work with really great people every day. And those are the things that made me want to come back. Everybody here cares deeply about what we do, about providing a service to our audiences and focusing on really impactful and culturally relevant news and storytelling every single day. And I couldn't ask for a better place to work.
All right, this is an interview about you, not NPR. And I want to make that clear. However, we can't talk to you without first discussing some of the issues that NPR is facing. Has faced since about 2020, when stories started coming out about the lack of diversity at NPR, but it even boils down to the lack of diversity at the affiliates, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, and I'll let you respond to this question in a second, but the lack of diversity in the audience. I mean, it starts there in a way, because when you look at NPR's audience, it's mostly white, suburban, affluent, educated people. I've been reading about some of the missions now over the past 2 years where NPR has been working diligently on management, working diligently on programming, correct me if I'm wrong, to change some of that. So there's more, I don't want to, should I use the term BIPOC or color, not just in management, but in programming and audience as well. Do I have that right? Is that what you're part of, this initiative at NPR?
I mean, look, there has been an effort across this company led by our CEO, John Lansing, to make diversity in our organization as well as in our audience our North Star goal. It is the first thing. We have weekly staff meetings that started at the beginning of the pandemic that John talks about every single week when we have those goals. And I really take that to heart because, he's not paying lip service to it. And you can see some very big changes. Some of the things I would point to are in our programming space, like the new podcast that Jay Williams is hosting for us, that I think has a really great opportunity to build that diverse audience. The work that we see going on with Code Switch and It's Been a Minute, which have been hugely successful over the last 2 years, again, focusing on diverse audiences led by hosts of color. But the other thing I just want to point out is, I'm someone who's wanted to be a journalist for a long time, but I'm not one of those NPR backseat babies. I didn't grow up listening to public radio. I came to public radio much later in my early adulthood, and I was able to find a home there because I was attracted to the sophistication of the storytelling, the voices that were able to elevate every single day. And one thing I've thought about a lot in taking this job and this new opportunity to join the ATC team is the fact that perhaps by virtue of this company empowering someone like me to help people across the country elevate their voices and to bring them into the conversation, perhaps there will be another kid out there in the middle of nowhere in Missouri or somewhere across the country who hears a voice that sounds a little bit like theirs or a name that sounds a little bit like theirs. And that gives them an opportunity to see us as a news home and a storytelling home for them, much in the same way I felt when I discovered NPR. I think it's a great opportunity. And I truly believe that we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. And I'm excited to see where we go in the next few years. I think it's really important.
Well, let's talk about that. You have made the rounds now, in mostly in public, but you've been in the commercial side, but you're not unfamiliar with the news publishing industry in general now. I know that because I've seen where you've been and I looked at your posts on social media. How can this industry attract more diversity, in your humble opinion? I don't want you to say you're not. I don't want you to become the CEO of your company. Do you see what I'm saying? In your opinion, what could more of our audience do to attract talent like you, even on a local level? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is a question that comes up a lot among my peers, those of us who have been in the industry 10, 15 years or so off. People always ask us this. And one of the big things I think would go quite a long way is we need to think about what types of experience we value. I spend a lot of time mentoring younger journalists of color and from other marginalized backgrounds. And many of them, because of what I do, reach out to me because they want to be political journalists. And a big thing that I hear from them is they want someone with experience, just for an example here, of covering Capitol Hill. But I don't know how to get that experience because no one will give me a chance. But perhaps they have great experience as an investigative reporter at a local news organization or a member station. Perhaps they've been working and covering their city council relentlessly. I think we've got to be better at identifying talent early on, taking a chance and being willing to cultivate that talent. I got lucky. I moved into national political journalism when I was 22 years old. Not everybody gets that opportunity. And I think it is incumbent upon us to look at the seeds and kernels of what's there and look and see what we can build. Because if we're just looking for people who have the experience, the exact experience maybe written in a job description, and that's all we're looking at, we're never going to diversify our pipelines. There are so many talented journalists that are getting overlooked consistently. And I think we owe it to ourselves to give them a chance, because when their voices aren't at the table, we're limiting what kinds of stories come out of our newsrooms.
No question. If and I agree with you 1,000%. If our newsrooms, whether it's broadcast or print or digital only, if they don't have diversity, how should I say, if their newsroom doesn't look like the community they're serving, it is hard to have that perspective. You agree, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. So, I think that is a given today. That is almost like in our DNA. If we don't accept that, we got a problem. Now, again, I don't want to get too into the NPR world, but you and I both know, and it's out there everywhere, that a lot of people of color have left. You're replacing some people who have left of color. So now you've just talked about finding and cultivating the talent. Am I allowed to ask you the next question? How do we keep them? What would you do? Go ahead.
You create pathways for them to grow and to be valued and for them to be their authentic selves at work. I know, anyone who decides to leave a job, you and I'm sure both know it's a deeply personal decision. It is often complex, but many times it's because you feel like there's something you're not getting in that space that you think you can get better somewhere else. Maybe it's compensation. Maybe it's opportunities. Maybe you're just frustrated and don't want to do the thing you're doing anymore. I think the biggest thing for me when I think about when I have chosen to stay a place versus when I have chosen to go elsewhere, it's, do I feel valued? Do I feel that management is supportive of helping me cultivate the type of career that I want? One of the things I love that happened with me at NPR is I rejoined the organization in October of 2019 to cover the 2020 presidential campaign. And at the end of that campaign, my managers on the Washington desk and I were able to have a candid conversation about where I wanted to grow next. I wasn't sure that I wanted to do another presidential campaign. I'd done 4, but I wanted to do something that dug into some of the salient cultural issues of the time. We were dealing with the uprisings and the awakening after the murder of George Floyd and all of these issues. So my editors helped me create a beat at the intersection of race and justice and politics that did not exist before, but they were committed to helping me find a space to grow in the ways in which I wanted to do and that focus on the types of storytelling that I want to do. And that's not a privilege everybody has, where they have managers that are as committed to helping them find their fit and helping them grow. So I think we need to invest in people's growth. We need to help create opportunities for them to grow in the ways in which they want to grow. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this, and we need to pay them equitably and competitively. People don't stay when their basic needs aren't being met. And that's a real thing that we need to talk about a lot more in this industry.
I agree. All right. And let's talk about the environment you're in now. Do you feel inclusive? Is it an inclusive environment for you? Are you comfortable? I mean, you said it before, you're praising your CEO. Do you see NPR now as a place that will maintain that diversity that it desperately, we just said before, that we all desperately need in media to reflect the audience that we have today that is, and the audience of tomorrow? Do you feel that NPR is on the right track now?
During the course of my conversations when I was taking this job and other conversations I've had with leadership, every indicator that they have given me is that they are not paying lip service to this, that this isn't a goal. It is an imperative of our organization and its survival. And over the course of the next few years, while being a host of one of the news magazine shows is not a formal leadership role, I don't have direct reports or anything like that. It is a very elevated role. And so I look forward to being a part of the force to make sure that continues to happen. And I hope that I'm able to help create opportunities for my colleagues, both colleagues of color, colleagues from other marginalized background, to make sure that they feel included at work and that they feel like they have the opportunities that they want.
You are becoming, if I may use the term, a face for NPR now. You're taking a chair and you will be there, and hopefully for many, many years to come.
I hope so.
So let's discuss that. Now that you will have this high profile position at NPR, you and I both know what's going to happen. Your social media will grow, right? You're going to start getting more followers or whatever you want to, how much control do they put over you on that? Are you allowed? I have to ask. I've never asked an NPR person, do you have to clear your tweets or clear your posts, or do you have freedom when it comes
No, I've never been asked to clear my tweets or my posts. I think that the company trusts its journalists to follow. We have a social media policy that I think is actually public and on the website, where it talks about the things that journalists are supposed to do on social media and things that aren't, but no one has ever told me, well, maybe you shouldn't have said that, or, oh, I'd like you to say this. That's never happened before.
Right. And another thing I love, if I may give some kudos to NPR, is during the last 2 years, I don't want to call it turmoil, it's just articles about becoming a more diverse environment. Some of the best investigative journalism about NPR came from NPR. You are aware of that, right? They did a good job reporting on themselves. And at the end of the articles, it always said this article is now matching the standards we have for reporting on ourselves. No senior management cleared this. That's fascinating that NPR will allow themselves to go under their own scrutiny. That must feel pretty good for you.
I think it's really important for our audience because we know that the audience at NPR, in a way in which I've never really experienced anyone else, cares very deeply about the mission of the organization, about what happens at the organization. So I think when you see our media correspondent, Dayton Flick, doing those articles and you see that paragraph long disclosure at the end, I think it's another signal to the audience that we're being transparent with them, that we're holding ourselves to the same rigorous demands and the same rigorous standards that we would hold other institutions that we're covering to. I've never been involved with any of those stories, but I just, as a reader and someone who cares very deeply about what we do, I think it's a really good thing.
Well, okay. So now let's discuss my final topic with you today. And I'm looking at my notes here, and I'm going to set it up this way. I have been accused by audience that I am too left. My publication is too left. I've lost advertisers because we put out articles about journalism and journalism that is sourced, a free, unfettered press being necessary for a Madisonian democracy. You are now going to be a face of NPR. NPR is considered by the right a very liberal Main Street media organization. You're going to be on the same place that I don't know, Joe Scarborough might be. Am I making sense? Or Nika Brzezinski? You're going to be in that club now. You're going to get hate mail. You know that. You're going to have people turn against you in a polarized world as you enter a space where some people want to defund you. Do you follow that? Because they feel as if you're too far left. What say you to that statement? I just have to ask your opinion.
No, it's a great question. And it's one I think about a lot, as somebody who spent a lot of their career covering, I got my start covering Republican politics for about 7 or 8 years. I covered Republican presidential campaigns. And so a lot of the conversation that I was having was breaking down those stereotypes of why that person, that source should bother talking to me anyway, because of where I worked, whether it be NPR or elsewhere. And what I say to that, honestly, is I want to encourage people, if they're hearing this and they're thinking that NPR may be too left, for them to give us a chance. If you listen to our political reporting, I think that we strive for accuracy and fairness and to foster in-depth conversations. I care very deeply about the sourcing of our stories and the types of people that we're elevating as experts. So what I do when people come to me with those kinds of concerns out in the field is I tell them who I am and I tell them what I've done and where I've worked and the types of communities I've covered. And I offer them the opportunity to give us a chance. I offer people the opportunity to ask me questions about the work that we do, because I think now, especially, people are pretty savvy, right? They want to know how the sausage gets made. They want to understand how our journalism comes together. So I guess that's my big takeaway. I ask people to give us a chance because I would put our reporting up against just about anybody else's. Yes, we live in an incredibly polarized environment, but as you kind of alluded to yourself, I think that having fact-based, critical-eyed journalism and thoughtful, creative storytelling that elevates all different kinds of voices. And when I say different voices, I don't just mean in terms of racial and ethnic diversity. I mean across the political spectrum too. I think that's really critical to helping our smart and curious listeners make sense of the world around them. So, I mean, I don't think I would want to work at NPR if we only covered one side of the political spectrum. That's just not what we do here.
This is very, very exciting. By the way, if anyone wants to start following you, you're easily found on Twitter, right? And all the other social media platforms?
Mostly just Twitter these days. I don't do as much social media as I used to, mostly because I've been super busy prepping for the new job. But I'm on Twitter at JM Summers, which is the easiest way to find me, or on our website, npr.org. There's staff pages for everyone, and you can follow all the work I've done up until this point.
We wish you a lot of luck. we're looking forward to following your ascension, your growth, your fun, your reporting, all the things you'll be doing for the industry. And more importantly, we'd like to stay in touch with you and see how things are going in time, and just watch your career flourish. Thank you so much for your valuable time.